Hey everyone, welcome back. As hinted at in my last Backrooms expedition video, I hinted at doing a part 2 because I was a little unsatisfied after finishing that first expedition. I didn't find a lot of entities or anything really. So, we're going back in today. And believe me, some different stuff happened. Right off the bat, when I entered back in, things looked very different. Everything looked new, and the ceiling even had air conditioners now. There was these big mold piles everywhere, and things looked newer, creepier. I continued on like I usually would, looking for anything I could find. While looking around in this new environment, I came across a couple more people. We gathered together and explored as a group and tried to find an exit. It didn't take us long to find something significant, though. After looking around for about 10 minutes, we stumbled across the async base once more. Flooded around the entering area, there was lots of biosecurity and bioinitiative gathered around. I wanted to see what the fray was about, and I was greeted by a certainly pleasant surprise. There sat 3 entities. One looking slightly like a wolf-dog hybrid, the other looking like a jukebox spider, and the last one wearing a purple suit and a purple hat, standing quite tall, nearly touching the ceiling. I didn't know who these entities were, but after talking around with the people a bit, I learned that the dog-wolf type creature was named Goliath. The tall man with the suit and the hat was named the Warden, or Johnny. And the jukebox spider, well, I'm not too sure what his name is, so we're just gonna call him Jukebox Spider. Eventually, I became a little uninterested and I had got all the footage I wanted, so I went to see if Pitfalls was in the same place, and I ran into a familiar face. Yep, we crossed paths again. It wasn't that surprising as there was a new update, and it had only been a day. But it was still utterly surprising, at the least. And he still led me to Pitfalls once again. But Pitfalls wasn't the same this time. At least last time there was an entity, but it was non-hostile. This time, there were entities, but they weren't exactly non-hostile. As I began following him through the dark corridors along with the biosecurity and bioinitiative ahead, getting ready for an expedition, I began to notice faces in the shadows. These faces were very recognizable. They were smilers. They were watching us, and they were bloodthirsty. After waiting for the bioinitiative and biosecurity to move ahead, we finally managed to get somewhere. But as we were walking through another dark hallway, death was lurking behind us, and it chose me. Luckily, once I deployed, I was at the same place I had the first time. There were a couple of other people with me, and I knew where I was going and they didn't, so I offered to lead the way. We ventured through the endless hallways and made it back to Pitfalls shortly. While on my way back to Pitfalls, I noticed a bunch of people gathered around a vent in the ceiling. I was curious at what it was because it was just a vent, so I got closer. Apparently, there was some sort of entity residing within the vents. I stuck around for a bit to see what it would do, and it seemed pretty hostile towards the people around it. Eventually, I just brushed it off and continued going. We followed the red line all the way to Pitfalls and made it down there. Luckily, the Smilers had left, but there was something else down there. Something bigger. There was a expedition going on, so I didn't get a great look, and I had to watch from a distance. But there was something massive, something with great power, sitting inside of a giant mold pile deep inside Pitfalls. They were speaking to it as if it was a living creature, which makes sense. Weird things began happening. Bloody messages were appearing on my screen, and there was a loud music playing. Suddenly, I heard a crash, boom, gunshots, and my screen went white. Everyone down there had been wiped out, except the biosecurity. Something big had wiped them out. All of us. When I redeployed once more, everything was dark. The explosion must have shattered all of the lights and everything around, and we were stuck in pitch black. Luckily, I had recently purchased a flashlight, and I was able to navigate around a little bit, but it wasn't enough to get back where I needed to be. After waiting in the dark for quite some time, I began to become hopeless, tired, like I had no chance. Was this going to be another failed expedition? But then, a voice. A familiar voice. My good buddy Jefferson and I began exploring around. We were dedicated. Nothing could stop us, except what happened next. As we were about to turn a corner, I heard a loud boom. It wasn't that of a gunshot or an explosion, but of a loud, deep footstep. Suddenly, as I was about to turn the corner, I saw a shadow on the floor. There was something behind that wall. Quickly, I recoiled back and began running, but my buddy Jefferson wasn't so lucky. They ripped him apart, piece by piece. There was now a giant mold creature chasing after me. I could hear its roars booming in my ears. But there was only one way I could escape it. It was faster than me, probably a little smarter than me. Okay, that one's maybe not true. And definitely stronger than me. So, there was only one way I could escape. And I had to break some ankles. I continuously juked out the entity, and it was dumbfounded, confused by my antics. Suddenly, though, my luck ran out. The lights went out. I was freaking out as there was a creature in the dark chasing after me, but it had disappeared as soon as the lights went out. But in the darkness, something else was lurking after me. Something worse. I stumbled across a bioinitiative and biosecurity expedition, and I asked for some directions. They seemed very dead set and serious, and they weren't answering me. I was getting a little distressed as smilers were appearing all around us. Luckily, there was another survivor with me who also had a flashlight, and we were able to fend off most of the smilers, and the biosecurity team was able to shoot at them and I think kill them. They began moving along, and I was thinking they were moving back to the async base, so I followed after them like most people would do. But they were getting rid of the red trail they had left behind them, meaning if I got lost, I had no clue where I was. And that's exactly what happened. Quickly, smilers surrounded me. They knew I had nowhere to go, and they saw me as easy prey. But luckily, I was saved by the backroom gods, and the lights turned back on. I was relieved and overjoyed that I had survived, and continued on exploring in the backrooms. Though, I met a familiar face. Yep, I found it again, but this time it didn't fall for my jukes and was more cunning than last time. It was able to chase me down and slaughter me like an animal. Luckily, though, I was reunited with my friend Jefferson. We continued exploring on together when we arrived at a camp-type place. Though, there were some unwanted visitors there. They did not look friendly, and they were talking about something, like they knew something we didn't. One of them had a large industrial weapon, and we didn't want to say anything that would potentially aggravate them. But after asking if they were friendly, one of them turned to me and said yes, but the other turned to the man with the gun and said 3 words I will never forget. Do your duty. He whipped out the gun and shot us to death. Dead. We were feeling defeated. It seemed everything here was trying to kill us in some way, shape, or form. We eventually got lost and went our separate ways. While he managed to find pitfalls on his own, I found something significantly different. I came across a large speaker with crab-type aspects. Apparently, after doing some research, this is called a radio crab. But this specific version was a speaker crab. I spoke to it a bit, but it wasn't seeming to answer me as it was focused on speaking with the other people around it. So I moved on and kept walking. After walking a bit more, I stumbled across the async base again. But there was something there. It was a radio crab, but this one, unlike the speaker, was actually a radio. It seems these things can broadcast to other channels around, which I thought was rather interesting. After saying hello to this radio crab and listening to the bioinitiative ask it a couple questions, I felt like I had gotten enough research for today. With that, I decided to end my expedition. Unlike the last one, this one, I believe, was a success. I learned about new entities, but next time, I'm going to be exploring the various levels in the Backrooms.